Hey, good evening, everybody. As always, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody is enjoying their day. Just want to take a few minutes to jump back on the RBC channel. For those who are new, that's new to the Rebuilding Community Trust channel. This site is dedicated to the things thereof in politics, law enforcement, community issues, such as what's going on right now in the news. And just want to welcome you to the channel. I hope everybody's enjoying the materials put out so far. Also, Freedom Fighter channel is out, and I've just been spending a lot of time on that side of the house, so I'm back over here, and I'm trying to bring you some good material in the next couple of videos. For those who's been tuning in, as always, thank you for taking the time to acknowledge and watch the video, share the material, subscribe. Please continue to share and spread the word on what's being said. And as always, thank you for being checking out the material and being loyal to the channel. So I'm not going to be before you long. I'm going to talk a little freely today. I've been watching what's going on. I have actually took a break from looking at this stuff for a while. What's going on in the news with all the brutality, the police shootings, the cases, and all that stuff. Took a little break, and I was working on the gospel side of the house. But I've came back to it, and I haven't really dug into it too deep yet. I'm still going through a lot of material. It's been a while since I've tuned in. But one of the things I'm noticing, we all know about the Daunte Wright case. Officer Kim Potter, I think they just announced her name, is being charged second-degree manslaughter, which is the normal, typical charges when it comes to law enforcement. Trial's going to have to come soon. There's going to be some other stuff in place. As of right now, we're dealing with the Chauvin case with the George Floyd murder. And I'm watching this stuff, and I'm looking at a lot of things, and I haven't dug through everything. But just some things I've been listening to. I don't know if people are watching the trial of the George Floyd, Chauvin trial. Highly suggest you watch it. I know for a lot of people it's painful, and they feel like that it's too much, but it's very imperative to watch this stuff. Take the emotions out of it the best that you can, and just look at some of the things they're saying. I see a lot of patterns of training issues, a lot of issues with training, some of these decertifications, a lot of policy issues in these departments. And, when it comes to training, I was talking to someone today, and with the Kim Potter situation with her and the officer and the Daunte Wright and her mistakenly pulling out her service weapon and shooting instead of using the taser, not knowing the difference into what she was doing at the time. It's unacceptable, hands down, unacceptable. And, I was telling someone, when you have a lack of training or, fear, either or both, mistakes are going to tend to happen. Now, to come to find out, she's veteran police officer. She's training. She was an instructor or some sort of instructor. So that's even more questionable on the fact that you've been in the game for so long, as if with Chauvin, and they've been the veteran police officers, or SPOs is what I'm used to calling them, senior police officers. You're not a rookie. So you're making careless, basic law enforcement one-on-one, mistakes. It tends to question your in-service training. It tends to question your intent, your motive. It tends to question the situation that you've been in. The fear factors. A lot of things in play. So we have to, as spectators in public view, understand to look at the case piece by piece, look at all the evidence, understand the roles and responsibilities of police officers, and kind of understand the training aspect of it. As I'm watching the Chauvin trial, one of the things that stick out to me is training. I know I mentioned a couple of representatives with the medical department. There's I can't remember the acronym right now, but it was an acronym that was that was spoken by the Minnesota Police Department that a lot of that training is being built over, and it represents and looks at the medical conditions of perpetrators or suspects. Look at that, the drug abuse, drug use, alcohol use, mental health is also involved. Learning how to respond and look at behaviors and patterns, look at body language, and look at, the medical aspect, in the realm of what law enforcement officers do to kind of help gauge how to view and look at suspects and see how to respond to them. Policies and establishing these in the recruits in the academy, but also in service training with seasoned officers or officers that are currently active, as in, being in the force. So these training techniques and policies and things that has been implemented by, the accreditations and policymakers and law enforcement executives and those who's been in the game for so long, they come up with tactics and ways to do things better. These things has to be implemented across the board. So one of the interesting things about, I'm watching part 12, day 12 of it, but one of the things that I found very interesting is one of the witnesses that testified. He was, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he's executive. He studies deadly force, and he's been teaching. He said he has over 29 years or 30 years of law enforcement experience teaching, instructing. And he said that Derek Chauvin was acting in the correct capacity. And the things that struck out to me was he explained deadly force. He explained different positions and movements. We talk about positional asphyxia. We talk about, different types of prone positions and getting the suspect on the ground. We talk about, the behaviors of a passive resistance and aggressive resistance and deadly force. And there's so much of that, you have to watch it, but it really, in-depth learning, saying from what I've already know, but just hearing opinions about how the case was handled. That is interesting to know on how George Floyd was treated, and the fact that he still says he acted, Officer Derek Chauvin, well, former officer anyway, acted in the capacity of the right and the justification aspect. Understanding that the questions I have was, we get an officer down on the ground, he's resisting or aggressive, you get him on the ground. You look at your crowd control. You look at, different tactics as far as, you look at, the traffic, you look at the space, you look at all types of different environmental scenarios. But then when you come down to it, when you have someone face down and you're not really justifying the knee on the neck for 8 minutes. I still don't understand. I understand the concept of a suspect that's non-compliant. I understand that. I understand that you have to get them down on the ground, get them cuffed, get them in control. I understand the aspect. And if they're still resistant, that's what you have presence for. You have more than one officer to help with the control. But it does not justify the knee on the neck. It does not justify not getting them into a recovery position. It doesn't justify that. I don't understand how you can sit here and say that he was justified in keeping the George Floyd pinned to the ground to the point where he dies and stops breathing or asphyxiates. And even with that, a lot of the officers are trained in CPR and emergency medical service. Not very much, but they're trained in CPR. So you not only are you keeping the customer in control, the suspect in the control, but you're also checking for vitals. You're also checking for emergency services as well. You're still an emergency responder at the end of the day. So you're still checking for vital signs. You're checking to make sure that the suspect is alive. You're making sure you're there to get him into custody, protect the community from whatever this threat is, get the threats neutralized in a safe way. But also your job is still to make sure that suspect is safe. And he's alive. He's not being killed, So you're taking out the emergency services responder aspect. I mean, not saying the police officers are medical professionals, because they're not. That's why you have EMS. But you basic CPR. You're checking vitals. You're making sure he's breathing. You're making sure he's not hitting his head. You still have an obligation to be safety measures. You still have an obligation for that. So you're not justifying to me why his knee was on his neck. You can sit here and say about threaten. You can sit here and say that he's resisting arrest. His legs need to be tied. I mean, I understand that concept too. When you tie someone's legs because they maybe get off and run. But in this case, if you watch the videos, you watch the cam footage, and the case, as the case continues to progress, you're going to see that what is the justification for having a knee on his neck for so long, where he dies. Now he gave an example where he says, if somebody hits hit with a taser, I've used a taser, right? And you hit someone with a taser, you have someone that might, you're not careful, that suspect tase, he can hit his head on the concrete. He can have a trauma blow force to the head, and he can die from that. Get it? I understand. That's understandable. Those scenarios do happen to where a freak accident or some case where the person dies. But again, this is why you have multiple officers. When you're responding to these calls, you have 2 or 3 officers on the scene, probably more than that. So in that case, it's no excuse to make sure that suspect is, taken to the ground and make sure that they're safe. Now, in the case with George Floyd, whether he was in narcotics, whether he was, he had, incoherent or whatever you want to call it, he was making it clear that he couldn't breathe, especially if you have a force applied to your neck and to your windpipe, to where you're breathing, your airway. And, I think he said too that one of the guys was talking, he said that, oh yeah, someone, you can differentiate between someone's actions and what someone's saying. So he gave an example where if someone's getting in the car and they're not, and they're saying they are, and then they actually not put action to it, then the word aspect is not being valued in the sense of him saying it. But if he's saying if he can't breathe, like he gave one, he can't breathe. He tried to say that if they're yelling or providing, the airways clear and they can't breathe and they're yelling, that means his airways clear. And I say, you're not a professional. You cannot assume that someone, because they say they're speaking loud, if I'm saying I can't breathe, that does not assume that you are in your opinion, from a medical professional, say that he has issues breathing. Your job as a public safety representative, law enforcement, is to make sure if he can't breathe, if he's not a threat, you speak to him, verbal judo, because you defined that too. And you use your word and you say, are you okay? And if you can't breathe and he's not, you say, stop resisting, stop moving, and I'll get you in the recovery. You move it to the recovery position. There's no excuse. There's no excuse whatsoever. I don't care what that guy's saying. You have 30 years plus experience, and you're telling me that he was justified in implying that amount of force. You said it, and he's even said it in his own words. You use the amount of force necessary to get the threat down. That's something I was taught. So after he was down and cuffed in the prone, and you see he's not resisting anymore, you get him up in the sitting position, sitting him up, and get him, eventually moving him into the vehicle. I stated this before in my last videos of talking about this topic. You get him into the car. So therefore, why are you saying that he was justified in his force? It's excessive. There's no reason to have knee on his neck for so long after he was already in prone, cuffed to the ground. And if he was resisting, that's what you have other officers for. You have 6, 7 officers there. You have 3 or 4 there. You call for more backup until you get the suspect to not resist. Crowd control, you're moving on with that. I understand that, and I get that concept too. But at the end of the day, I just don't see why you justifying that George Floyd was Derek Chauvin was justified in using the force that he used on George Floyd. So to not dwell on it too much longer on that, I highly encourage people to watch and study the case and watch what is being said. Look at the policies, look at the practices of the Minneapolis Police Department. Look at training, because that's a big thing. And honestly, as I've done studies over the years and learned about the accreditation and training aspect of it, American law enforcement organizations need more training. I mean, end of the day, academies 6 months, 8 months long. There's places in other countries where I've looked at research where their academies are 2 years long. Where they constantly, constantly in the case of population and dynamic and crime levels, it may not be feasible to have academy for 2 years long for most places. You got, you have a lot of different manning and moving parts. So I get the concept of why academy 6 months long, getting them trained. But do we really, is it really effective at this point where we look at the cases, we can look at the statistics and see if it's really effective to have the training that we're having? Because yes, the training is probably good in the sense of context and curriculum. But what about application aspects? What about when you're dealing with new recruits? What about these veteran police officers that have been in 10, 12 plus years? They get complacent in their training. They're out there doing this day in and day out. They have massive experience in multiple different areas. They work different specialized units, and they're out there day in and day out, and they get complacent in their duties, and they feel like that they can we call it gun deck, and skip these policies and procedures that have been implemented as you expect a new recruit that's never been in police before to do. But as a veteran, you kind of, I've been in the game. I know this, I know this neighborhood. I know this route. I've been on this beat for years. And you get comfortable, and then you feel like you're going to start gun decking. You want to start flexing. So with the Daunte Wright in his situation, where Kim Potter, former officer Kim Potter, it's the same example. You're a veteran police officer. What you can't tell the difference from your taser, from the way the taser and the trigger pull, than you from your service weapon. It's fear. You got into a fear. You got into something. And he overpowered you, or tried to. He got in the car he ran from you. And then, as a woman police officer, you got to make up for that. It could be a little bit of pride. It could be, fear. It could be a little bit of intimidation. It could be a little bit of trying to prove yourself. But you got it to the point where you shot and killed this man because you forgot to know the difference between a taser and a service weapon. And now now's another case at hand. Now you're getting charged with second-degree manslaughter. Now it's the same situation with George Floyd in the same city, in the same jurisdiction, because you're not thinking about the training. You're a veteran. It's not not saying rookies don't do it, but it's veterans that's doing this. Those who's been in the police officer game for years. So I just, as I sit back and watch this stuff, the biggest thing that I say, that I'm going to say, everyone, and you look at the whole case. That's why I say you got to look at the whole case. You have to study every detail. You cannot look at this stuff with emotion, because what it's going to do is going to cause you not to rationally think about every aspect of this case. You're looking at George Floyd case in many different angles. You're looking at it from an EMS medical angle. You're looking at it from a law enforcement angle. You're looking at it from a civilian angle. You're looking at it from a business perspective angle, consulting angle. You're looking at it in many different perspectives, and you're seeing the case in so many different ways. It gives you insight on how to view this case in a proper way, but you got to take out emotion. Because at the end of the day, a lot of times when we think of African Americans, we think of mental health, we think of drug and alcohol use, we think of aggressiveness, we think of violence, we think of hatred towards the police, right? These are the factors that associate us to African Americans, specifically men, and not women, not excluded, but specifically men. And every time a law enforcement officer approaches an African American man, these are the factors that are always inclusive. These are the factors that are included in these things every time. It's either drug, alcohol use, it's aggressiveness, it's resistance, it's noncompliance. And end of the day, I was telling someone else, if an officer pulls an African American man over, or group of them, the noncompliance and the resistance from the suspect, especially if you're guilty, you're wrong, they have probable cause or reasonable suspicion to arrest or detain you, right? Then it's 9 out of 10. Your life expectancy is going to decrease drastically. It's going to decrease. It's going to go down. At this point in the game, as of right now, I truly feel that if you resist in any form or do any type of noncompliance, your life expectancy is going to drop. It's going to drop real quick. It can be it's something simple as putting your hands up, putting your hands on the dash. If you look at the case with Derek Chauvin, one of the officers telling him to put his hand on the dash, and it was he asked him only twice, and then he already had his gun out. His gun was already out before he got to the car. With African American men, the gun is already out. Or if it ain't out, it's going to be out. 2 commands: get your hands up, get your hands up. Gun is drawn. This is how serious it's getting. Any noncompliance or resistance, the gun is drawn. Deadly force is going to escalate very quickly. They're going to feel threatened. They're going to feel intimidated, and it's going to be a reason that the gun is going to be pulled out. Not the taser, not the OC. In this case, we talk about the black lieutenant, African-American lieutenant that was sprayed with OC, with pepper spray. I didn't even had time to really dig into that yet. But from that, what I did see, is a little bit of both sides. But end of the day, especially our military, we have to be a little bit more, look at the case again, take the emotion out of it, and look at what was wrong, what happened, why did it happen that way, and what was the point of him getting pepper sprayed. It would seem like it was more of a humiliation or a tactic of I'm gonna one up you. That's what that case seemed like. But again, I haven't really dug into it, so I'm not gonna really speak on it. I may do a separate video, but right now I'm just kind of really getting back into this and digging into these things. And I just want to kind of get some insight because people did ask me to talk about it. But what the main concern I'm really looking at right now is the meat and potatoes of this George Floyd, because this is where law enforcement, training, accreditation, policy and procedures, and medical and mental health all come into this mix. You know, the way that everything responded from the witnesses on down, all for the medical aspect of it, from when he was dealing with sickness, he was hurting, pain, the asphyxiation, all these things come into play. And the policies and procedures, this training aspect of law enforcement, deadly force continuum. Even one of the witnesses, the same witness I was listening to before, he said that deadly force continuums are may be slightly different. He said some places are liberal than others. He gave an example of where a moving vehicle. He said, you know, some officers can't shoot at a moving vehicle, even though it is a weapon being used against them. Some places are more liberal than others, so the deadly force continuum may vary from place to place. Some people have more rights to shoot you down than they do in other places. The training aspect of it is important. People need to understand the importance of training. Civilian review boards has to review these training policies, these policies that officers under. This is why post-certification is so important. Accreditation and certifications are so important. Some of these very people that are doing the crimes are instructors, are ones that teach. They're the ones that should know the policy and procedures and the law enforcement aspects of being a police officer, a peace officer. And these are the ones that are serving in this capacity for years. And these are the ones that are committing these crimes. These are the ones that are absolutely forgetting to know the difference between a taser and a handgun. But you train officers. So to me, it's like, what's the issue? Is it intent or motive, or is it fear, or being human, or is it just because you're trying to up one up? What is it? Because at the end of the day, lives are being lost because people are not really in these capacities, not understanding how to move. And again, it's a different ball game when you're doing it. I have to agree with that. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. It's a different ball game when you being a police officer in it is just sitting by and looking in the outside in. When you actually on boots on ground, it's a split second decision every single time. You're constantly making decisions. You're constantly heads on the swivel. You're constantly always you have acute awareness of what's around you. You do not know what's going to happen second by second. So it is a little rough. Pressure is applied and you make decisions that are quick. So I understand that. But again, the training, you know what I'm saying? The consciousness and again, is so much to it. That's why I say I can't really speak on a lot of stuff right now. I'm just reviewing the cases. I'm watching this stuff. I'm studying. I'm looking at certain things and see how they play out. But when you're dealing with law enforcement, it's very minute and second base. You could be having good intent to pull someone over. It was a cop I saw one day. He pulled a traffic stop. Guy pulled out a high power weapon and shredded him, just shot him and killed him on the spot. It's just that split second that you make a decision whether you live or die as a police officer nowadays. So that's why I say emotional aspect has to be taken out, and people have to really look at how things work and try not to think of it in a sense of injustice for a moment, just to see the facts. Because yes, there is injustice. Yes, there are things that has not been done correctly. Yes, there's people that failed and flawed in their training and in their active use of force. That's something that is a powerful revelation when it comes to use of force, that it needs to be looked at more often. It needs to be reviewed case by case. We need to have more consulting firms and consulting companies that with experience on every aspect and every level. You don't just have you need to have a consulting firm that have different experiences, different the CEOs or the workers, whoever that's doing it needs to have various backgrounds in law enforcement and criminal justice to have these things and look at these cases more thoroughly and clearly and see how can we change the use of force continuum in certain aspects. You know what I'm saying? How can we balance between police officers using deadly force and then getting the threat neutralized versus over excessive force and killing innocent people or doing things out the way to where lives are lost? Casualties because of fear, or casualties because of just doing daily duties, being complacent, not keeping your head on the swivel. Casualties of law enforcement when their head is not on the swivel, when they're trying, they're more focused. It's tough because people are more focused on law enforcement officers anyway. They're focused on not trying to violate the policies. They want to be careful. Like, I don't want to shoot to kill a man, but at the same time, I got to live too. You know what I'm saying? I gotta go home to my family too. So it's a delicate balance between law enforcement. It's tough because at the end of the day, you don't want to take lives. You don't want to be looked at as this cop that shot and killed an innocent person or shot and killed someone's family member. But at the end of the day, if you're not too careful, like that one cop, and I think it's in California, you're not careful, a guy pull a gun out, you're done. It takes a split second, you're done. So I really hope people really, especially African American men, I always say this, but at some point you got to chalk it up to like trying to resist. Any inkling of resistance is going to escalate very quickly. Fortunately, I mean, we can do the statistics and look at white people and see what happens with them when they get pulled over and they make it act a plain fool. But that white privilege, and I'm sorry to say it, it saves them. With black men and other minorities, is not an option. You have to determine if you're guilty and you committed a crime. Resisting arrest is going to get you killed. If you asking for suicide by cop, which is an actual definition, legal term by law enforcement called suicide by cop, and you want to die, resist. Be non-compliant. Fight an officer. Because as soon as they get their hand on that weapon, they're going to pull that thing, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to go off. It's going to go off. It seems like every case, the gun's going off. Pow, you're done. So I just, resisting, man, is just like I said before, sometimes we got to be smart. Can't go in emotion. I understand African American men. I can understand it, where you care for police. They detain you. They lock you down. And you can say you didn't do nothing wrong, but they're assessing. If they detain you, at this point, it's about living. It's not even about pride. It's like, yes, I said, yeah, you should not, not comply, or, you have your rights. But I'm seeing too many people die. It's too many people getting shot. It's just, if you're being uncompliant and, it's a fine balance. Because if I'm saying I got my rights and I'm not going to comply, you may not make you as a black man. You may not even make it to get a lawyer. You might be shot and killed. It's just that's what I see right now. You might be shot and killed from trying to even exercise your rights. So what do we do? The questions I ask, what do we do? Do we just comply and let them do whatever they want? Or do we take the risk of fighting back and saying no and not being non-compliant and resistant and still get killed? Or get killed, or possibly lose your life, or get injured, or get slammed to the ground, or get hit with a taser, or get pepper sprayed, or get OC'd and hit with a baton. All it takes is one good hit from a baton in your head, you're dead. All it takes is one good move. They put out that taser. You live with a taser, but one good move, like Kim Potter, pull out a gun instead of a taser and shoot you and kill you. It's getting so normalized of African American men or African Americans in general to get killed. It's like movies coming on the screen. It's like it's consistent. It's so consistent. Something came out today. I'm watching George Floyd trial, and somebody said something about another incident in Ohio somewhere. And I know some of this stuff is late because some of this stuff happened last year. The media covers it, or, they do the investigations, or the media gets attention. People put enough attention on it, and then it comes out in the public. But a lot of stuff already happened late in last year or recent or whatever. But this stuff is becoming a norm. And it's because of a lot of factors. It's because, people's hearts are hardened. It's because, people are not educating themselves. People are not, standing together. People gotta, sometimes it's better just go ahead and let them do what they gotta do. And if you know they're wrong, you got a lawyer. That's what you pay lawyers for. Get past the rest point. Get past. If you know for sure in your heart that you did wrong, and if you did wrong and you know you did wrong, you know you are high, you know you drinking and driving, you know you committing a misdemeanor or felony, and they have PC or reasonable suspicion to arrest or detain, hey, don't resist when you high. Don't resist when you know you're wrong. You got that weed. You got that. It's not legal. You got that coke. You ran this red light. Just you wrong. Just chalk it up. Live. So if you feel like they did something out of line, you can go to court and fight it. You can get a lawyer, hire a lawyer, and your chances are a lot better. At least getting the points dropped off. At least you might get a charge reduced. But if you resist and be non-compliant, you ain't gonna have. You're not gonna have no chance to fight. Because all they're going to do is give them any officer inkling to do anything, they're going to do it. They're going to shoot. They're going to do whatever, injure, whatever. Because they feel justified to do so. Qualified immunity. That's something that people don't need to look up. You need to look up what qualified immunity means. You need to, because that's what's going to get officers off the hook. With this George Floyd trial, we're going to see. I've encouraged people to at least take a look at it. And if it's going to show the criminal justice system at its best, and if George Floyd, Derek Chauvin walks clean, then there's no point in having faith in the criminal justice system at this point. At that point is about finding ways to keep our community safe and maintain. Now, every cop isn't bad. I've said this before, and I still stand by. Every cop isn't bad, but with this criminal justice system and the way things going, and people outright, that's why you got to be careful. Family members, sons, cousins, brothers, friends, pops, dads, it don't even matter. Any black man, any minority, in any fact, it don't matter. Hispanic, black man, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. Minorities in general, we have to be smart, especially African American men, black men. We have to be smart on how we move out here when it comes to police, because any little sense of aggressiveness, you consider a threat, and a threat has to be neutralized in their eyes. And that's just the way it is. And I hate to say it like that, but at this point, from what I'm seeing and what I continue to see, is that it's something simple as just, all right, I put your hands up. It hurt your ego. Just put your hands up. It's not even about, even if you feel like they're wrong, just do it so you can get by. So you can just make it to where you got to go. Just make it, and then get a lawyer and go and take that junk to court and tell and have footage, have your cams on, have your dashboard. You comply, and if they're wrong, the city will get sued. That officer will get charged. Hopefully, they'll get fired and they'll get arrested. But if you resist, you're going to give them ammunition to not only use it in court, but give you ammunition to should I pull a gun out and shoot you? People now, they mistaken tasers for guns, or to guns for tasers. So you can't trust them to apparently not. You can't trust them to use a taser on you and make sure you use a non-lethal weapon. That's what considered a taser is. OC baton taser is non-lethal weapons. No, you can't trust them no more. They thinking they pull out a taser, they pull out a gun and shoot and they kill you. That's what happened to Daunte Wright. Rest in peace. I hope Kim Potter get what she get. I hope the officer gets what she gets. But we'll see. So please watch it. That's all I have to say. Everybody, the stuff is public, so you can go and review the case yourself. You can go look on there. You can take your time and review it. I highly recommend people to take their time. It's emotional in nature. Yes, they're going to show you footage. You're going to see things from different angles in the body cams. You're going to see different officers involved. You're going to hear the emotion in the background about George Floyd when in a different angle. But you have to filter through that, because it is educational. It does show the mindsets of people in this country. It shows the mindsets of law enforcement and where the direction is going, and it shows the mindset of training and what is needed to hopefully make these changes. And it would just educate you. But at the same time, it is emotional. It does going to make you mad. It's going to make you sad and all that good stuff. But I highly recommend people to watch it and take some time to take some notes, learn, listen. How can I better my safety with law enforcement? How can I act to law enforcement in a different perspective? So that's it. I just pray that everyone out here be safe, and please educate yourselves. Read, look up the reasonable suspicion, look up probable cause, look up police discretion, look up suicide by cop, look up these different terms and learn about this stuff. If you for your sons and for your family members or friends, have a conversation with them and sit them down and talk to them about the stuff that you're seeing. It's not, again, we ain't trying to, I understand people don't want to dwell on it. I know people don't even turn the news on. I understand it. I have to take my breaks. But it's especially for young black men, because Daunte Wright was 20 years old. Young black men, sit down, your mother, your dad, your moms, your cousins, whoever, mentors, coaches, pastors, leaders, teachers, whoever it is in their lives, sit them down and have a conversation with them and talk to them about these things. Teach them how to defend themselves in the right way. Teach them how to respond to a police officer when they pull them over. Compliance is not pride. It's not an ego thing. Even if you're wrong, in the sense, I feel like at this point, until people are held accountable, you need to just go ahead and be compliant, and so you can make it through the arrest or the stop, whether you're guilty or not guilty or probable cause, and get to the place where you can get a lawyer. If they're wrong, get a lawyer, go to court. Until if this Derek Chauvin is a scapegoat and he gets what he deserves, Maybe officers was like, shoot, it may change the game. But that's if he gets the correct sentence. And it may not be what people think it is. But until an example is made from this type of crimes and these types of things, black men, we have to be careful. I'm sorry, we have to be careful. We have to be careful on what we do and how we do it. We have to be careful on how we respond to the police and how we respond to law enforcement in general. We have to be careful. Until a scapegoat is made, until someone and this judge determines and renders a verdict that's going to be justifiable, that he's going to get some time for this murder. I'm talking about 20 years or something, until he gets something drastic. Maybe then, if it happens, maybe a law enforcement officer will really take it seriously by their oath to protect and serve, not to just execute. Not everybody anyway, but I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying? Maybe when people start getting sentences for this stuff, people will eventually, you know what I'm saying, learn to kind of tweak and tailor what they're doing. But until then, resistance and non-compliance, it's a major risk. It's like Russian roulette. You may get a cop that day. You flex on him one time for the one time, and you a threat. You may not live. It's really that quick. It's not a 50% chance that you may live. It's not a 75% chance. It's not even a 98% chance. Your chance might be 10% dead. Straight up. That's just what it is. So that's all I have. www.benningcommunitytrust.org. I'm gonna try to get my page and make some updates. I don't know what I'm gonna talk about next. We'll see how the trial goes. We'll see what other events come out. Any comments, please leave behind. Freedom Fighters channel. Go over there and get some word, get some Jesus in there. All right, and pray and seek him, because at the end of the day, I'm a Christian, but seek God, because we need him. We all do, not just blacks and white. Everybody need him. Everybody need Christ. So get on there, check out the material, share, subscribe, share this with your brothers, your cousins, share this with your friends, share it with your neighbors. Black men, get up on here and listen to this stuff. Sit back and analyze the trial. Try to take the emotion out of it and get the facts. Get something out of this and apply it to your life. All right? Y'all have a blessed one.